Morning of March 18, 2013, started like any other for Dave Williams and his 17-year-old son, Alex Williams. The two had traveled to Gans Bay, South Africa, known as one of the best places in the world for shark diving. It was a trip they had planned for months, one final adventure together before Alex left for university. Dave, a seasoned diver with over 20 years of experience, had introduced his son to the sport when he was a child. Alex had only recently earned his diving certification and was eager to prove himself in open waters. The boat, the Ocean Spirit, left the harbor early in the morning, carrying a small group of divers, including Dave, Alex, their guide, Martin Harris, and 3 other experienced divers. The weather was clear and the waters were calm, perfect conditions for the dive. The location they were heading to, known as Shark Alley, was famous for its dense population of great white sharks, which often lurked near the area's seal colonies. Many divers came here to see the legendary predators up close, either in cages or through free dives. Dave had done both and was comfortable in the water. Alex, though confident, had never encountered a shark in the wild before. As the boat reached the dive site, Martin gave the briefing. He reminded everyone to stay close to their dive buddy, remain calm if they encountered a shark, and avoid making sudden movements. The goal was to explore the reef below while watching for the majestic creatures that patrolled the deep. Dave and Alex double-checked their gear, exchanged a silent nod, and followed the group into the water. The descent was smooth, the water crystal clear. Schools of fish darted past them, weaving through the coral-covered rocks below. Alex stayed close to his father, his breathing controlled, his excitement barely contained. For the first 15 minutes, everything was peaceful. They moved through the reef, watching small marine creatures move in and out of hiding spots. Then Dave noticed a shift in the water. The smaller fish had vanished, a sign that something larger was nearby. Turning slightly, Dave saw a massive great white shark, at least 16 feet long, moving silently beyond the visibility line. It was watching them. Dave knew enough about sharks to understand their behavior. The shark wasn't attacking, it was investigating. He signaled to Alex, telling him to stay still and remain calm. Alex saw the shark now too, his body tensing. It was his first close encounter with such a powerful predator. For a moment, nothing happened. The shark circled at a distance, uninterested in the divers. The group remained still, watching carefully, but then something changed. The shark's posture shifted. It moved more urgently, its eyes locked onto the two of them. Dave tightened his grip on his spear gun just in case. Alex, still motionless, breathed steadily, waiting for his father's cue. Without warning, the great white turned sharply and charged. It moved with terrifying speed, closing the distance between them in seconds. Dave pushed Alex back instinctively, but the shark was already upon them. Its massive jaws opened wide, clamping onto Alex's leg. The force sent a cloud of blood into the water. Alex let out a muffled scream through his regulator as the shark shook him violently. Dave reacted instantly. His training kicked in, and without hesitation he aimed his spear gun and fired directly at the shark's side. The spear struck, but it barely made an impact. The shark was relentless, dragging Alex downward, his body jerking as he struggled to break free. Desperate, Dave abandoned his gear and lunged toward the predator, punching at its snout, trying to force it to let go. Alex's blood mixed into the water, attracting more movement in the distance. Martin, still nearby, saw the chaos unfold and rushed toward them, signaling the other divers to ascend. He reached Dave just as the shark released Alex for a brief second. Dave grabbed his son, trying to pull him upward, but the shark wasn't finished. It lunged again, this time straight at Dave. Its massive jaws clamped onto his chest, tearing through his wetsuit. The force knocked the air from his lungs, and within moments, blood poured from his body. Martin had no choice. He tried to pull Alex away, but the younger diver was already going into shock. The shark dragged Dave down deeper, thrashing its powerful body as it ripped through him. His last conscious moments were spent reaching toward his son, trying to save him, but it was too late. Alex, still bleeding heavily, struggled in Martin's grip, his body weak. The second shark appeared then, drawn by the scent of blood. It struck Alex next, its razor-sharp teeth cutting into his side. Martin screamed through his regulator, hitting the shark with a dive knife, but it didn't matter. Within seconds, Alex was gone too, disappearing into the dark water as the sharks ripped into him. Martin, his heart pounding, kicked upward as fast as he could, breaking the surface and gasping for air. The other divers were already on the boat, waving frantically. The crew pulled him aboard, and his hands shook uncontrollably as he ripped off his mask. Below, the water churned with movement, the last traces of red fading into the depths. The boat captain immediately called for emergency response, but they could do nothing. The ocean had taken them. News of the attack spread quickly, shaking the diving community to its core. Dave Williams was a respected diver. His experience was unmatched, and his love for the ocean was evident in everything he did. His son Alex was full of promise and eager to follow in his father's footsteps. They had entered the water together, a father guiding his son, but neither had made it back. The incident left many questioning the risks of diving in known shark territories. Some believed that baiting in the area had altered shark behavior, making them more aggressive toward humans. Others argued that the great whites had been hunting, acting on instinct. But it wasn't just an attack for those who had been there that day. It was a fight, a father's desperate attempt to save his son, to do whatever it took to bring him home. He had died trying, refusing to leave his boy alone in the darkness. The ocean had given Dave and Alex their greatest adventures. And in the end, it had taken them both. On June 14, 2012, Michael Donovan set out on what was supposed to be a relaxing yacht trip through the Caribbean. A seasoned traveler and avid sailor, the 45-year-old American businessman had taken time off from his hectic life in New York to enjoy the open sea. He had rented a luxury yacht, the Sea Breeze, in Nassau, Bahamas, and planned a week-long journey through the tropical waters, stopping at small islands. The trip had been peaceful, the days filled with clear skies, gentle waves, and the quiet solitude he had longed for. That morning he had navigated toward a remote stretch of open water, planning to sail toward Grand Turk by sunset. The ocean was calm, and the air was humid. Michael enjoyed his breakfast on the deck, soaking in the view. He checked the forecast before leaving, ensuring the weather would remain stable. By early afternoon he was miles from any land, fully embracing the isolation that made sailing so thrilling for him. Without warning, the wind shifted. The once blue sky darkened and heavy clouds formed on the horizon. Michael knew the weather in this region could change suddenly, but he had not expected the storm to move in so fast. The waves grew violent within an hour, tossing the yacht like a toy. The wind howled and rain slammed against the deck. Michael tried to maintain control, gripping the wheel with all his strength as the yacht tilted and groaned under the storm's pressure. A sudden deafening crack echoed as a massive wave crashed into the vessel's side. Water flooded the deck, and before he could react, another wave struck. The yacht lurched violently, and Michael lost his footing, slamming hard against the railing. The storm's force overwhelmed the boat, and the hull split in seconds. Michael scrambled for the emergency raft as the yacht sank beneath the relentless waves. By the time the storm passed, the sea had swallowed the Sea Breeze whole, leaving nothing but debris floating on the surface. Michael clung to the small inflatable life raft, his breath ragged, his body aching from the impact. His hands trembled as he scanned the endless horizon. There was no land in sight, only the vast, unforgiving ocean. He was alone. The sun beat down mercilessly as the hours dragged on. Michael rationed the small supply of water and food he had managed to grab before abandoning ship. His body ached from exhaustion, but the worst part was the silence, the endless waiting. He knew his best chance of survival was to remain in the raft and hope for rescue. But as the sun dipped, another fear set in, the darkness. As night fell, the water around him grew eerily still. The sounds of the ocean changed, the gentle waves replaced by something more ominous. A faint splash echoed from somewhere nearby, then another. Michael's pulse quickened as he scanned the water, his eyes barely adjusting to the moon's dim light. Then he saw it. A smooth and deliberate shadow glided beneath the raft. Its shape was unmistakable, a shark. Its presence sent a shiver down Michael's spine. Michael had read about oceanic white-tip sharks, their tendency to stalk shipwreck survivors, and their relentless curiosity, which often turned into aggression. He stayed as still as possible, barely daring to breathe. Minutes passed, then an hour. The shark circled, sometimes vanishing into the darkness before reappearing closer. Michael clutched the small emergency knife in his hand, knowing it was a useless defense against a predator built for hunting. Then the attack came. The shark rammed the raft's side without warning, nearly flipping it over. Michael grabbed the ropes, trying to steady himself, but another jolt sent him crashing into the water. Panic surged through his body as he kicked desperately, trying to climb back onto the raft. Then searing pain. A crushing force clamped around his leg, dragging him downward. The water erupted in a flurry of bubbles as Michael thrashed, his screams lost beneath the surface. The shark's teeth tore through flesh, the pressure unbearable. Desperate, he stabbed at the shark with his knife, but the blade barely pierced its thick hide. The predator shook its massive head, ripping deeper into his leg before letting go. Michael fought his way back to the surface, gasping for air. Blood clouded the water around him, and he knew the shark wasn't finished. His vision blurred, his strength fading fast. He clawed his way back onto the raft, his hands slick with his blood. The pain in his leg was unbearable. His body was shaking uncontrollably. The shark circled again. Michael's breaths came in ragged gasps. He knew he wouldn't last much longer. The loss of blood was making him weak. His mind screamed for survival, but his body was failing him. He gripped the edges of the raft, his fingers tightening as the predator returned. Another strike. This time the shark lunged straight onto the raft, its powerful jaws locking onto Michael's side. A violent thrash spun the raft, and Michael was yanked into the water again. His world turned into chaos, pain, water, darkness, then nothing. The ocean fell silent once more. The next morning, a passing cargo ship spotted the drifting raft. The crew rushed to investigate, lowering a lifeboat into the water. When they pulled the raft closer, they found what was left. Torn fabric, scattered supplies, and blood-stained water. Michael Donovan was gone. His disappearance sent shockwaves through the sailing community, a grim reminder of the unforgiving ocean and the predators that lurked within it. The oceanic white-tip shark, known for its ruthless attacks on shipwreck survivors, had claimed yet another victim. The morning sun had risen high over the waters off the coast of Gansbai, South Africa. It was December 12, 2020, a warm summer day in the southern hemisphere, and the ocean stretched endlessly in all directions. The region was well known for its dense population of great white sharks, attracting thrill-seekers and marine researchers alike. The waves moved gently beneath the luxury yacht owned by Peter Hallstrom, a 34-year-old entrepreneur who had spent the last several years chasing adrenaline-fueled experiences. Peter had invited 3 of his closest friends, Daniel Foster, Marcus Klein, and Jason Reynolds, to join him for a week-long cruise. The trip had been planned as an escape from the pressures of their busy lives. They had spent the past few days deep-sea fishing, drinking expensive champagne, and swimming in the open waters. The yacht, staffed with a full crew, offered everything they needed. A private chef prepared meals, drinks flowed freely, and every moment was spent indulging in the finest luxuries. After a late breakfast on the deck that morning, Peter stood near the railing, gazing at the horizon. The yacht's captain, Richard Voss, had mentioned earlier that sharks were common in the area, often drawn to fishing boats discarding scraps. The idea excited Peter, who had always been fascinated by sharks. He had seen them on nature documentaries and even considered going cage diving. But today, he wanted to see one up close, without a cage separating them. A few crew members had just finished cleaning the fish caught the day before, leaving behind a bucket filled with scraps. Peter walked over and lifted it, curiosity filling his mind. He carried the bucket to the edge of the yacht and tipped a handful of fish guts into the water. His friends, initially distracted by their drinks, turned to watch. The scent of blood spread quickly through the water, drifting beneath the surface. Minutes passed in silence. Then, a shadow moved below the yacht. A bronze whaler shark appeared first, gliding through the water. It circled once before disappearing. Then a much larger presence stirred below. A great white shark, unmistakable in size and movement, had arrived. Peter's excitement grew as he reached for more scraps, tossing them overboard. The shark swam closer, its massive body moving effortlessly through the water. The others watched as the predator glided beneath the surface, its dorsal fin cutting through the waves. Encouraged by the response, Peter wanted to bring it even closer. He grabbed a large chunk of meat from the bucket, holding it over the water. The shark turned, its dark eyes locked onto the bait. Peter leaned forward, stretching his arm out to get a better look. The shark swam toward the meat, its movement smooth and deliberate. But as it lunged, it did not go for the bait. It instantly changed direction, its jaws snapping shut on Peter's arm. A sharp, searing pain shot through his body as he screamed. The shark's teeth sliced deep into his flesh, the pressure crushing the bones in his forearm. Blood poured into the water, spreading in a cloud around the thrashing animal. The impact sent Peter forward, nearly pulling him overboard. His friends reacted instantly, grabbing his body and pulling him back onto the deck. Having felt resistance, the shark released him almost immediately and disappeared beneath the surface. Peter collapsed onto the deck, gripping his arm. Blood soaked his shirt, pooling beneath him as the crew scrambled into action. The yacht's medic rushed forward, pressing a towel against the wound to slow the bleeding. Peter's face had turned pale, his body trembling from shock. His friends stood over him, frozen, unable to process what had happened. The yacht's captain contacted the nearest coastal authorities for emergency medical assistance. The yacht began moving toward shore at full speed, cutting through the waves as fast as the engines could. Crew members secured Peter's arm, wrapping it tightly to control the bleeding. Every second felt longer than the last. By the time they reached the harbor, an ambulance was already waiting. Paramedics lifted Peter onto a stretcher, rushing him toward the hospital. His pulse was weak, his breathing uneven. His friends followed closely behind, their once carefree vacation now overshadowed by the horrifying encounter. Doctors worked quickly to assess the damage. The shark's bite had caused severe lacerations, tearing through muscle and nerve tissue. Though the bones had not been completely shattered, reconstructive surgery would be necessary. Peter was stabilized and prepped for emergency treatment. Hours later, he awoke to find his arm heavily bandaged, the pain radiating through his body. The news of the attack spread quickly. Reports surfaced online about a luxury yacht excursion gone wrong, with photos of the blood-stained deck circulating on social media. Marine experts weighed in, explaining that sharks were naturally drawn to the scent of food in the water. Some speculated that the sudden movement of Peter's arm had triggered the shark's instinctive response. In the days that followed, Peter reflected on the incident. He had spent years chasing adrenaline, pushing limits without considering the risks. Now, with his arm permanently scarred, he understood the consequences of his actions. His fascination with sharks remained, but it had been replaced by something else: respect. The yacht remained docked for the rest of the trip. The crew, shaken by the attack, refused to allow any more reckless behavior. Peter's friends, once eager for excitement, found themselves unwilling to return to the water. The moment had changed them all. A few days later, Peter walked out of the hospital, his arm still wrapped in thick bandages, a dull ache serving as a constant reminder of what he had been through. The deep scars would remain etched into his skin, a permanent mark of that fateful encounter, a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. He had set out with a dream, eager to see a great white shark up close, and he had gotten his wish in the most harrowing way imaginable. The experience had changed him, leaving behind more than just wounds. He would never forget the moment he locked eyes with the predator, the raw power, the sheer force of nature. It was a memory that would live with him forever, a tale of fascination and survival. Of September 15, 2023, a small group of divers prepared for an unforgettable experience off the coast of Hawaii. The waters around Kona were known for their vibrant coral reefs and an abundance of marine life, making it a prime destination for night diving. For seasoned divers, the ocean at night offered something magical, an entirely different world where creatures that remained hidden during the day emerged under the cover of darkness. Among the group was Nicole Barrett, a 33-year-old marine biologist from California. She had been diving for over a decade and had traveled around the world to study different marine ecosystems. That night, she was eager to document nocturnal sea creatures for her ongoing research. Accompanying her were 4 other divers: Andrew Collins, a diving instructor who had led dozens of night dives in Hawaii; Sarah Whitmore, a travel photographer capturing underwater life for an upcoming feature; Jack Reynolds, a retired Navy diver; and Ian Patel, a marine conservationist focused on shark behavior. The dive was planned carefully. At 9 p.m., they boarded their charter boat and set off from Kailua Kona. The captain, Daniel Vaughn, had worked these waters for years and knew them well. As they reached the dive site, he gave the group final instructions. reminding them to stay close and keep an eye on their surroundings. Visibility at night could be deceiving, and losing track of one another was easier than many divers expected. By 9:45 p.m., the group was in the water, descending into the dark abyss with only the beams of their flashlights cutting through the blackness. The reef below them was alive. Colorful fish darted between coral formations, while nocturnal creatures like octopuses and eels emerged from hiding. The divers moved slowly, scanning the reef and signaling to one another whenever they found something of interest. About 20 minutes into the dive, the group began to spread out slightly, each person drawn to different areas of the reef. Nicole, engrossed in her work, drifted slightly away from the others, her flashlight illuminating patches of coral as she took notes on her waterproof slate. She had always been comfortable diving alone and was used to focusing deeply on her research. As she continued swimming, a strange sensation crept over her, an awareness that something was watching. She turned her flashlight toward the open water beyond the reef, and that was when she saw it. A large oceanic white-tip shark, perhaps 10 feet in length, glided into view. Nicole knew oceanic white-tips were bold and inquisitive. Unlike some other shark species that preferred to keep their distance, white-tips were notorious for approaching divers with curiosity, sometimes even aggression. She remained still, keeping her breathing slow and controlled. The shark moved closer, drawn to the beam of her flashlight. At first, the shark's movement seemed calm, almost indifferent. Nicole had encountered white-tips before, and most of the time they would inspect a diver and then move on. But something about this one felt different. Its movements became more erratic, circling her faster, cutting off her escape route. A flicker of unease settled in her chest. She knew the protocol: stay calm, avoid sudden movements, and keep her flashlight aimed downward to reduce attraction. But as the shark looped closer, she realized it wasn't just curious. It was testing her. Then, without warning, it struck. A sudden impact sent Nicole spinning backward as the shark rammed into her side. Her regulator slipped from her mouth and she scrambled to recover it, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. She reached for her dive knife, gripping it tightly as the shark circled back. The next attack came fast. The shark lunged, jaws wide, clamping down on her thigh. Searing pain shot through her body as she struggled, kicking at the predator with her free leg. The force of the bite tore through her wetsuit, and warm blood clouded the water around her. Nicole knew she had to act fast. She stabbed at the shark's side, trying to force it to release her. The blade punctured its rough skin, but the shark barely reacted. Instead, it thrashed violently, shaking her like prey caught in its grip. Panic set in as she realized she was alone. The others were too far away to see what was happening. She tried to reach for her emergency signal light, but the shark struck again, this time tearing into her calf. Her vision blurred from pain and loss of blood. Back near the reef, Jack was the first to sense something was wrong. He turned just in time to see Nicole's flashlight beam jerking wildly in the distance, before vanishing completely. He signaled to the others and swam toward her last known position. Andrew and Sarah followed, their flashlights scanning the dark water. When they reached the area, they saw a cloud of blood drifting through the currents. Then, through the haze, they spotted Nicole's motionless body sinking toward the ocean floor. Jack reacted instantly, grabbing her and inflating her buoyancy compensator to lift her toward the surface. Andrew followed, keeping his flashlight on the water around them, searching for the shark. It was still there, circling just beyond the light's reach. The ascent felt agonizingly slow. Nicole's body was limp, her breathing faint. When they broke the surface, Daniel was already leaning over the boat, ready to pull them aboard. Ian helped lift Nicole onto the deck while Sarah ripped off her dive gloves to press against the wounds. Daniel radioed for emergency assistance as Andrew and Jack worked to stabilize Nicole. But she had lost too much blood. Her pulse faded within minutes, and despite their desperate efforts, she never regained consciousness. When the Coast Guard arrived, there was little they could do. Nicole was pronounced dead on the boat. The remaining divers sat in silence, shock settling over them. The ocean had taken one of their own, and nothing could change that. News of Nicole's death spread quickly. The diving community was shaken. Oceanic white-tip sharks had long been known for their unpredictable behavior, but attacks were rare. Experts debated what might have triggered such aggression. Some speculated that the shark had been starving or disoriented by the artificial lights. Others pointed out that night dives inherently carried risks that could never be fully controlled. The waters off Hawaii remained unchanged, but the ocean would never feel the same again for those who had been there. That Monterey Bay, California, was a prime location for whale watching. The waters were home to migrating gray whales, massive creatures moving through the ocean on their long journey. Many people visited this spot each year to witness the spectacle, and on September 14, 2022, Mark Whitman, a dedicated whale watcher and amateur photographer, was one of them. Mark had always been fascinated by marine life. He had spent years traveling to different coastal locations, capturing images of whales, dolphins, and sea lions. That morning, he boarded the Ocean Spirit, a well-known whale-watching tour boat, excited for what the day would bring. The sky was clear and the sea was calm, perfect conditions for spotting wildlife. Other passengers, including tourists and researchers, gathered around the railings, scanning the horizon for movement. The tour guide, Captain Ron Weaver, explained that a pod of gray whales had been sighted earlier near the kelp forests, and that's where they were headed. As the boat moved further from shore, Mark adjusted his camera, making sure he was ready. His plan was to take close-up shots of the whales as they surfaced. He had done this many times before, but today felt different. Maybe it was the excitement in the air, the way everyone on the boat was buzzing with anticipation. After an hour at sea, the crew spotted the whales, a group of 5 grays, their dark backs gliding just beneath the surface. Water sprayed into the air as one exhaled, the mist catching the sunlight. The captain slowed the boat, allowing the passengers to take in the view. Mark wanted more than just pictures from the deck. He had brought his snorkel and wetsuit, hoping to get a better angle from the water. The crew had warned passengers not to get too close to the whales, but Mark wasn't worried. He had swum near these animals before, always careful not to disturb them. He knew the risks, but the chance to capture them up close was too tempting. Without hesitation, he slid into the water, feeling the cool rush around him. His snorkel allowed him to breathe as he floated, camera strapped to his wrist. He kicked forward, moving closer to where the whales swam. The world beneath the surface was calm, only the faint hum of the boat's engine breaking the silence. For a few minutes, everything was perfect. Mark watched as the massive creatures moved gracefully below him, their long bodies cutting through the water with ease. He lifted his camera, snapping pictures, completely unaware of the danger that had just arrived. A shadow loomed below him, moving fast. A great white shark, at least 14 feet long, had entered the area. Sharks were common in Monterey Bay, drawn by the rich marine life and the seasonal migration of seals and sea lions. The movement of the whales, combined with the splashing from the boat and the snorkeler, had attracted this predator. Mark didn't see it at first. His focus remained on the whales, capturing the moment. Then a sudden force slammed into him from below. A sharp, crushing pain exploded through his right arm as the shark clamped its jaws around him. The impact knocked his snorkel from his mouth and he let out a muffled scream underwater. Panic set in instantly. His mind raced, trying to process what was happening. The shark had his arm locked in its powerful jaws, shaking him violently. Mark thrashed, trying to pull free, but the teeth dug in deeper. Blood filled the water around him, mixing into a cloud that spread fast. Up on the boat, the crew saw the attack unfold. Someone shouted, pointing toward the red stain in the water. The captain reacted immediately, ordering the rescue team to move. A deckhand grabbed a life buoy while another crew member prepared a pole to push the shark away if needed. Underwater, Mark struggled. His vision blurred from the pain, but his instincts told him to fight. He kicked hard, aiming for the shark's gills, one of the few sensitive spots on the predator. His foot connected, and for a split second the shark released its grip. Seizing the moment, Mark pushed upward, his good arm reaching for anything to hold on to. The boat was still several feet away, but there was a floating research platform nearby, a small raft used for monitoring marine life. Desperation drove him forward. His injured arm barely functioned, but he managed to grab onto the platform's edge. The crew worked fast. They threw a rope toward him, urging him to hold on. Mark gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain, and secured the line around his body. As the shark circled below, drawn by the scent of blood, the crew hauled him onto the boat. He collapsed on the deck, gasping for air. His wetsuit was torn and his arm was shredded, deep bite marks running from his shoulder to his elbow. Blood dripped onto the floor as the crew wrapped a towel around the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. His body trembled from shock, and his breaths came in ragged gasps. The shark didn't leave. It continued to circle the boat, its dark shape cutting through the water. The whales, sensing danger, had already moved further away, their massive forms disappearing into the deep. The crew remained tense, watching as the predator lingered. Eventually, after several minutes, it slipped beneath the surface and was gone. Mark's world blurred as the pain overtook him. The last thing he remembered before blacking out was the sound of the helicopter approaching, ready to airlift him to safety. When he woke up in the hospital hours later, his arm was wrapped in bandages, stitched together from the deep wounds. He had survived, but the experience had changed him. The ocean, once a place of beauty and adventure, now carried the memory of the attack. Whale watching would never feel the same again. On April 6, 2024, a coastal cleanup event was set to take place along the shores of Santa Barbara, California. It was organized by a local environmental group, Ocean Guardians, whose mission was to remove trash and plastic waste from the beaches and shallow waters. Volunteers of all ages had arrived early in the morning, ready to make a difference. Among them was Sarah Whitman, a 31-year-old marine conservationist known for her efforts in raising awareness about ocean pollution. She had spent years advocating for marine life protection, believing strongly in the balance between humans and the sea. By mid-morning, the volunteers were spread along the beach, some picking up trash along the shore while others waded into the water to remove plastic bags, bottles, and abandoned fishing nets. The atmosphere was lively. People talked and laughed as they worked, feeling a sense of purpose. The water was calm, and with the sun overhead, it seemed like the perfect day for the cleanup. Sarah led a group into the shallows, using a net to scoop up debris floating near the surface. With her were volunteers Jason Reynolds, a college student studying marine biology, and Rachel Kim, a local high school teacher passionate about environmental causes. They moved carefully through the waist-deep water, collecting pieces of plastic entangled in seaweed. Every few minutes, someone would call out in excitement after removing a large item, proud of the effort they were making. The waters off Santa Barbara were home to diverse marine life, including fish, sea turtles, and the occasional shark. Most sharks in the area were harmless species like leopard sharks, which often swam close to shore but posed no threat to humans. However, bull sharks had been known to enter shallower waters, especially when drawn by unusual activity. Unlike great whites, which preferred deeper waters, bull sharks were more aggressive and territorial, capable of sudden attacks if provoked or curious. As the cleanup continued, the movement and splashing of the volunteers unknowingly attracted attention beneath the surface. A large bull shark about 8 feet long had been lingering farther offshore. It had been feeding on fish near a rocky outcrop, but became curious about the disturbance in the water. Unlike other sharks that usually avoided humans, bull sharks were unpredictable. It swam closer, weaving through the underwater currents, drawn by the scent of disturbed sand and the commotion above. Sarah focused on untangling a plastic bag wrapped around a clump of seaweed and didn't notice the shark at first. Jason, a few feet away, was collecting aluminum cans that had sunk to the bottom. Rachel was farther out, reaching for a floating fishing net. None of them realized that danger was approaching. The first sign of trouble came when Sarah felt a sudden, strong force hit her from below. It was so fast she didn't have time to react before searing pain shot through her leg. The bull shark had latched onto her calf, its sharp teeth cutting deep. The impact knocked her off balance and she fell backward into the water. The volunteers nearby heard the splash and turned just in time to see Sarah thrashing, her arms flailing as she tried to push herself up. A cloud of red spread in the water around her. Jason froze for a moment, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Then, instinct kicked in. He lunged toward Sarah, grabbing her under the arms and trying to pull her toward shore. Rachel, hearing the commotion, turned and saw the blood in the water. Her stomach twisted in fear. The other volunteers on the beach began shouting, their voices mixing with the crashing waves. People ran to the shoreline, some pointing, others grabbing their phones to call for help. The shark didn't retreat immediately. It circled back, sensing weakness. The blood in the water only heightened its instinct to attack again. Jason struggled to drag Sarah. her weight making it difficult to move quickly. She gasped for air, her face contorted in pain. Two more volunteers, David Brooks and Lisa Chen, rushed into the water, each grabbing one of Sarah's arms. They pulled with everything they had. The shark loomed just a few feet away, its dark shape visible beneath the surface. It circled once more before finally turning away, disappearing into deeper waters. The moment they reached the shore, people surrounded Sarah, pressing towels against her leg to slow the bleeding. Her skin was pale and she trembled from shock. Someone yelled for a first aid kit. Another volunteer pressed a phone to their ear, calling emergency services. The reality of what had happened sank in fast. A cleanup meant to protect the ocean had ended in chaos. The volunteers, once full of energy, now stood in stunned silence. Many had spent years believing in the beauty of the sea, never expecting to witness such a violent attack firsthand. Minutes later, paramedics arrived, loading Sarah onto a stretcher. The bite on her leg was deep, the damage severe, but she was alive. As the ambulance doors closed, Jason sat on the sand, his hands still shaking. Rachel wiped her face, trying to process what had just happened. The shark lingered offshore for a while before vanishing into the open ocean. The sea, calm and inviting just hours ago, now felt like an entirely different world. On March 15, 2023, the clear blue waters surrounding the Maldives glistened brightly under the morning sun. The calm ocean gently washed against small islands scattered along the horizon. Beneath the surface lay a world of colorful coral reefs, tropical fish, and mysterious underwater caves waiting to be explored. Jason Morrow, a 31-year-old diver from Sydney, Australia, prepared to dive into these beautiful waters with his friends. Jason had been diving since he was a teenager, and his love for the ocean began early in life. Growing up near the coast, he spent weekends snorkeling and exploring underwater life. He quickly became skilled, earning advanced certifications and becoming a professional diving instructor. His friends admired his bravery, kindness, and calm nature underwater. Jason had traveled to many places known for diving, including the Great Barrier Reef in the Caribbean, but the Maldives had always been his dream destination. This trip finally brought Jason, 3 close friends, and a local dive guide to explore the rich marine life near the Maldives' famous Ari Atoll. They had been diving together all week, photographing colorful fish, turtles, and manta rays. It was perfect, and Jason felt relaxed and happy. That day, they chose a popular dive site known for its clear waters and plenty of wildlife. Jason checked his diving gear carefully, always cautious and prepared. He and his friends jumped into the warm water, slowly descending toward the vibrant coral reef below. The underwater world was stunning. Bright-colored fish swam lazily around coral formations, and small sharks appeared far in the distance, moving slowly and peacefully. Jason felt comfortable and safe, gently swimming ahead, guiding his friends around colorful fish and coral. Then, a large shadow appeared near them. It was a tiger shark, easily recognizable by its striped markings. At first, the shark circled slowly, calmly gliding through the water. Jason and his friends watched carefully but did not feel afraid. They knew sharks often swam past divers without harming them. However, this shark began behaving differently. Its movements became faster, more unpredictable. Jason felt uneasy, watching closely as it suddenly changed direction and came directly toward him. Everything happened very fast. The shark lunged forward, opening its powerful jaws and biting into Jason's torso. Sharp teeth easily tore through his diving suit, slicing his skin and causing serious injuries instantly. Jason felt sharp pain as the shark shook him violently. Blood quickly filled the water, surrounding him in a thick cloud. His friends froze in fear, shocked at the sudden, brutal attack. Their hearts raced as they desperately swam toward Jason, waving their arms and trying to scare the shark away. The predator ignored them at first, continuing to thrash Jason's injured body back and forth. Jason was losing strength quickly. His vision blurred, and he struggled to breathe through the pain and shock. The shark finally let go, leaving Jason floating motionless in the blood-filled water. Jason's friends grabbed him quickly, pulling him upward toward the surface. The shark stayed nearby, still circling aggressively, watching closely as they tried to save their friend. They rushed upward toward the safety of their boat, carrying Jason's limp body between them. When they finally broke the surface, Jason's injuries were visible. His torso was severely wounded, bleeding heavily. His face was pale, his eyes closed tightly from shock. As the boat approached quickly, the divers shouted urgently for help. Its crew prepared to pull them from the water. The crew moved fast back on board, wrapping Jason in towels to slow the bleeding. Everyone could see how serious the attack had been. His friends stared helplessly, knowing the situation was dire. Jason lay still as the boat sped toward the shore, breathing weakly. His friends silently prayed he would survive, even as they felt terrified by the shark's sudden and deadly attack. The peaceful ocean now seemed dangerous and unpredictable, forever changed in their minds. The boat raced back toward shore, its engine loud against the quiet sea. Jason lay on the deck, barely moving. His breathing was faint and uneven. His friends knelt around him, fear clear in their eyes. They tried their best to stop the bleeding, using towels and whatever else they could find. On the beach, emergency workers waited anxiously. As soon as the boat arrived, they carried Jason onto a stretcher, rushing him to a waiting ambulance. The shark's bite had caused deep wounds across his torso, leaving severe injuries. Blood continued soaking through the towels as medics worked quickly. At the local hospital, doctors and nurses hurried Jason into surgery. The injuries were serious, and everyone knew time was running out. His friends waited quietly in a nearby room, hoping for good news. The minutes felt like hours as they sat together, silent and afraid. Outside the hospital, news spread quickly about the shark attack. Other divers and island tourists heard the story and began asking questions. Shark attacks were uncommon in this area. Many wondered how something like this could happen in such peaceful waters. Soon, news crews gathered near the hospital entrance, eager to hear updates about Jason's condition. The doctors worked hard, trying everything they could to save Jason's life, but his injuries were too severe, and despite all their efforts, Jason died from blood loss. The news spread quickly, leaving his friends and family devastated. Jason's death deeply affected the small diving community in the Maldives. People who had known him shared stories of his kindness and love for the ocean. Other divers became frightened, unsure if the waters were safe anymore. Experts debated why the shark had attacked so suddenly, wondering if something unusual had caused its aggression. Local authorities promised to investigate further. Soon after, they placed warning signs along beaches and advised divers to be cautious. Shark experts arrived to study why this attack happened, hoping to prevent something similar. In Jason's hometown of Sydney, Australia, friends and family held a quiet memorial by the ocean he loved. They shared stories about his life, his courage, and his kindness. His parents spoke about how diving had always brought Jason happiness, though now it had taken him away forever. After Jason was attacked in the Maldives, the area became a place people avoided. Tourists canceled diving trips, and businesses worried about their future. Some dive operators temporarily shut down, scared that something like this might happen again. Others demanded new safety rules and better protection for divers. Marine safety officials announced stricter diving rules, including more training for guides and more careful planning of dive locations. They hoped these measures would keep everyone safer, though no rule could bring Jason back. His friends struggled deeply with guilt and sadness. They replayed the attack repeatedly in their minds, wondering if they could have done something differently. Some could no longer dive, feeling too scared to return to the water. Months passed slowly, but the memory of Jason's attack remained fresh. The community never forgot how suddenly their peaceful dive had turned deadly. New divers arriving at the Maldives learned about the attack, reminding them always to respect the ocean and its hidden dangers. Over time, the fear faded slightly, though no one ever fully forgot. Dive shops set warnings, reminding visitors about shark safety. Families became more careful, knowing how quickly a fun day could turn tragic. Jason's loss changed the community forever. His memory became a lesson, teaching others about caution and respect for nature. Even though the ocean looked calm and safe, danger could always appear without warning beneath the surface. On June 12, 2023, the sun shone brightly over Cocoa Beach, Florida. It was a perfect summer day with gentle waves washing onto the shore. Families gathered, enjoying the soft sand and clear, shallow water. Laughter filled the air as children played near the shoreline, chasing beach balls and splashing happily. Among the crowd was Ryan Mitchell, a cheerful 16-year-old from Orlando, Florida. Ryan loved sports and spent most of his free time outdoors. At school, he was known as a talented soccer player, always smiling and making friends easily. His family often visited Cocoa Beach, enjoying relaxing weekends by the ocean. Ryan was at the beach with his parents and younger sister, Emily. They had arrived early, setting up their towels and umbrellas near the water. Ryan quickly joined other teenagers in a friendly beach game, tossing a colorful beach ball back and forth. The game moved closer to the shoreline, where the water was only waist deep. Ryan laughed as the ball bounced away, landing a short distance ahead. He chased after it, running into the shallow water. He didn't notice anything unusual, just the clear ocean shimmering in the sunlight. But beneath the peaceful waves, danger was approaching fast. Suddenly, the calm day turned terrifying. A large 7-foot bull shark appeared from beneath, lunging toward Ryan with surprising speed. Its powerful jaws closed tightly around his leg, biting deeply into his flesh. Ryan screamed in pain, losing his balance and falling into the water. People on the shore heard Ryan's cries, turning quickly to see what had happened. Parents stood frozen in shock, watching helplessly as the attack unfolded. Ryan's mother screamed, running toward the water. The shark thrashed violently, pulling Ryan deeper beneath the waves. Blood filled the water, quickly spreading around him. Ryan fought desperately, punching and kicking the shark with all his strength. His struggles finally caused the shark to loosen its grip, and Ryan broke free. He rose to the surface, gasping for air, weak from the attack. Nearby swimmers rushed to help him, grabbing his arms and pulling him toward the safety of the shore. Ryan's body trembled from shock and fear as he was carried quickly out of the bloody water. Once safely on land, Ryan's severe injuries were clear. His leg was badly torn, deep wounds visible as blood soaked the sand around him. People quickly wrapped his wounds, calling urgently for help. Ryan's family surrounded him, their faces pale with panic and fear. Emergency vehicles raced to the beach, sirens loud and lights flashing brightly. Paramedics lifted Ryan carefully onto a stretcher, working quickly to control the bleeding. His family watched helplessly, unsure if their son would survive. As Ryan was rushed to the hospital, beachgoers stared at the quiet ocean. The peaceful summer day had become a nightmare. The shallow waters, once a place of joy, were filled with fear and uncertainty. Ryan's fight for life had just begun, and everyone waited anxiously to learn if he would survive. Doctors hurried to help him at the hospital, knowing every second mattered. His leg was badly injured, with deep bite marks and torn muscles. Nurses carefully cleaned his wounds while doctors worked to stop the bleeding. Outside the operating room, Ryan's family waited nervously. His mother and father held hands tightly, afraid of losing their son. Hours passed slowly as doctors performed surgery, trying their best to repair the damage. Friends and neighbors arrived at the hospital, offering comfort and support. Finally, the doctors came to speak with Ryan's parents. They explained that Ryan had survived, but the attack had caused serious injuries. He would need months of therapy and multiple surgeries to regain full use of his leg. The family felt relief knowing Ryan was alive, even as they understood the difficult journey ahead. News of Ryan's attack quickly spread through Cocoa Beach and nearby towns. Local families felt scared, wondering if the shallow waters were safe. Parents worried about their children playing near the shoreline. People began avoiding the beach, fearful of another attack. Marine experts spoke publicly, explaining that bull sharks often swim near shore. They warned swimmers to be careful and watchful, especially near the shore. Soon after, lifeguards at Cocoa Beach put up new signs, clearly warning visitors about the possible dangers in shallow water. At home, Ryan slowly began recovering. His leg healed very slowly and walking was difficult. Friends from school visited often, cheering him up and keeping him company. But emotionally, Ryan struggled greatly. He had nightmares about sharks, frequently waking up frightened and unable to sleep again. His love for sports faded, replaced by anxiety and fear. The ocean, once a place he loved, now terrified him. He refused to return to the beach, unable even to look at pictures of water without feeling sick. Ryan's wounds healed physically as months passed, but the emotional scars stayed deep. His parents arranged for him to see a counselor, hoping it would help him deal with his fears. Slowly, talking about the attack made Ryan feel stronger. He began understanding what happened and learned ways to cope with his memories. Over time, Ryan grew braver. He shared his story at local schools, warning other children to stay alert at the beach. He helped the community understand the importance of ocean safety. People admired his strength and courage, inspired by his ability to recover after such a frightening event. The community around Cocoa Beach became more cautious but also more informed. Families listened closely to safety warnings and were careful when swimming in shallow waters. Ryan's story reminded everyone of the hidden dangers of the sea, teaching everyone to respect the ocean. Ryan never fully returned to his old self, forever changed by the shark attack. Though his leg healed, the fear of the ocean stayed with him. Yet, through sharing his experience, he found a new purpose. His painful story helped protect others, turning a terrifying day into a meaningful lesson for an entire community. On August 5, 2024, the Lopez family arrived on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii, excited for their vacation. Carlos and Maria Lopez, in their mid-30s, had planned this trip carefully. They hoped to show their two young children, Sofia, 8, and Diego, 10, the wonders of the ocean. Carlos worked as a firefighter in Los Angeles, and Maria was a nurse. Both loved adventure and were strong swimmers. They wanted their children to share their passion for nature and water sports. This vacation was their first trip to Hawaii, and the family eagerly planned each day's activities. On their second day, the family decided to snorkel near Honolulu Bay, a popular and safe spot known for colorful fish and coral reefs. The ocean was calm and clear, perfect for beginners. Carlos and Maria helped their children wear life jackets and snorkel gear and taught them to breathe underwater through their masks. The water felt warm and gentle. Soon, the family floated peacefully above the reef, amazed by the brightly colored fish swimming beneath them. Sofia and Diego laughed, pointing excitedly at turtles and starfish. Carlos and Maria stayed close, enjoying seeing their children so happy. But their splashing and playful movements caught the attention of a large shadow lurking nearby. Below, a massive 14-foot tiger shark moved silently closer, drawn to the noise. Unaware of the danger beneath them, the family continued swimming peacefully, enjoying their experience. Suddenly, the calm water turned violent. Without warning, the huge tiger shark lunged upward, biting deeply into Maria's leg. Maria screamed in pain and fear as sharp teeth tore through her skin and muscles. Blood quickly filled the water around her. Carlos instantly saw the attack. Without thinking, he dove toward his injured wife, desperate to save her. He punched and kicked fiercely at the shark, trying to force it to let go. The shark, now enraged, released Maria's injured leg but quickly turned its attention to Carlos. It bit aggressively, tearing deeply into Carlos's side and causing severe wounds. Sofia and Diego screamed in panic, watching helplessly as their parents fought against the powerful predator. Ignoring her intense pain, Maria saw a spear floating nearby, dropped earlier by another snorkeler. Summoning all her strength, she reached for the spear, gripping it tightly. Despite her injuries, Maria thrust the spear at the shark, desperately trying to drive it away. Carlos struggled in pain, his wounds bleeding heavily into the water. The shark continued attacking aggressively, but Maria did not give up. Finally, after several determined strikes from Maria's spear, the shark swam away. The water around the family remained red from their injuries, and the children cried uncontrollably. Carlos and Maria, severely injured, struggled to stay afloat, holding on to each other and their children. They knew they needed help quickly or they might not survive. In moments, nearby swimmers rushed to their aid, pulling them carefully toward the shore. The peaceful vacation had suddenly become a desperate fight for survival. The lifeguards quickly carried Carlos and Maria onto the sand on the shore. Both had severe injuries from the shark's bites, Maria's leg deeply wounded and Carlos's side badly torn. The children cried nearby, frightened and unsure if their parents would survive. Paramedics rushed quickly onto the beach, carefully treating their wounds. Carlos and Maria were taken immediately to the nearest hospital. Doctors hurried to save their lives, working hard to repair the extensive damage caused by the shark's powerful jaws. Carlos had deep wounds on his side and chest, requiring immediate surgery. Maria's leg was badly injured, needing several hours of emergency care to stop heavy bleeding. Friends and family in Los Angeles received the shocking news and quickly flew to Hawaii to support the children. The Lopez family's terrifying encounter soon became national news. People across Hawaii and the United States felt shock and fear. Many questioned the safety of snorkeling and swimming near protected reefs. The attack raised concerns, as tiger shark attacks were rare, especially in calm, shallow waters. Marine experts studied the incident closely. They explained that tiger sharks were known to patrol near reefs, hunting fish and turtles. Experts believed the shark had mistaken Maria for prey, causing the unexpected and aggressive attack. Despite the explanations, tourists began avoiding snorkeling tours, afraid to enter previously safe waters. After weeks in the hospital, Carlos and Maria slowly recovered. Both survived their frightening encounter but were left with lasting scars. Maria's leg injury was severe, leaving her with a permanent limp and difficulty walking. Carlos faced months of therapy due to deep wounds on his torso. The emotional impact on the family was even greater. Returning home to Los Angeles, the family struggled to move forward. Carlos and Maria found themselves afraid of the ocean they once loved. Their children had nightmares, often waking in fear from dreams about sharks. The peaceful memories they hoped to create in Hawaii became a haunting reminder of their terrifying experience. To help cope, Maria began sharing their story publicly. She visited local schools, warning families about ocean safety and reminding children to stay alert when swimming. Carlos joined his wife, encouraging beach safety and awareness programs. Their experiences inspired the community. Soon, stronger safety rules were established along Hawaiian beaches. Lifeguards monitored waters more closely and provided clearer warnings about shark sightings. Snorkeling companies educated visitors carefully, hoping to prevent similar tragedies. Despite their fear, the family found strength in each other. They chose not to let the shark attack define their lives. Carlos and Maria focused on protecting others by sharing their experience and knowledge. Slowly, their children regained trust and comfort around water, though caution remained strong. Over time, the Lopez family healed, though never fully. The memories of that terrible afternoon remained clear. They learned to appreciate each day, grateful they survived the frightening attack. The shark changed their lives forever and gave them new strength to educate others, preventing future heartbreak for families enjoying the ocean. The boat rocked gently in the waters off the coast of Stewart Island, New Zealand. It was early morning on March 8, 2024, and the research team aboard the Blue Horizon was preparing for another day of fieldwork. Paul Harrington, a 38-year-old marine biologist, stood at the edge of the deck, staring into the vast expanse before him. This was his life's work, studying great white sharks in one of the most active predator zones in the world. Stewart Island had long been known for its dense shark population, drawing researchers from across the globe eager to understand their behavior. Paul had spent years researching great whites, dedicating his career to learning about their hunting patterns, migration routes, and human interactions. The team had been stationed in the region for nearly a month, deploying tracking devices, studying feeding habits, and observing the sharks in their natural habitat. Today, they plan to conduct a controlled cage dive to observe their movements up close. Alongside Paul were his colleagues, Dr. Evan Carter, a shark behavior specialist, Jenna Lawson, a marine biologist focusing on predator-prey relationships, and Ryan Hale, the boat's captain and safety diver. They had worked together on previous expeditions, but today's dive carried a unique sense of anticipation. The team had been tracking an unusually large great white shark for weeks. Tagged with a GPS device, it circled the area. Still, it behaved unpredictably, lingering near the boat longer than usual and ignoring the bait typically used to lure the sharks in for observation. The morning had started like any other. The crew checked the equipment, ensured the steel dive cage was secure, and reviewed safety protocols. Paul was eager to get in the water. Despite the risks, this was what he lived for: being face-to-face with one of the ocean's most formidable predators. By noon, the team had anchored near a drop-off point where the water depth plunged dramatically. Paul donned his wetsuit and oxygen tank while Jenna and Evan prepped the bait drum. Reinforced with steel bars, the cage was slowly lowered into the water. Everything was routine. Paul climbed inside, gave the team a thumbs up, and they began the descent. The water was clear and the visibility was better than expected. As Paul adjusted to the depth, the familiar silence of the ocean surrounded him. He scanned the area, waiting for movement. Schools of fish darted past, uninterested in his presence. The bait drum was secured outside the cage, releasing small amounts of chum into the water. It didn't take long for the first shark to appear. A shadow emerged from the distance, slow and deliberate. The great white was massive, at least 18 feet, its body moving with an unsettling ease. Paul's pulse quickened, not out of fear but excitement. He watched as the shark circled the cage, its dark eyes locked onto him rather than the bait. This was unusual. Typically, the sharks went for the easy targets, but this one seemed indifferent to the fish remains drifting through the water. It was watching him. The shark made a slow pass, moving closer than expected. Paul steadied himself, gripping the cage's bars as it glided by, its body just inches away. Then it disappeared into the blue, vanishing for what felt like minutes. Paul exhaled, relaxing slightly. Then, without warning, the shark returned, this time with force. It rammed into the cage, the impact so strong that Paul's grip slipped. The entire structure shook. The steel bars groaned under the pressure. Paul's breathing quickened. This wasn't normal behavior. He had been in cage dives before and had seen sharks become curious, even aggressive, but this was different. This was calculated. Another hit, harder. The top of the cage bent inward slightly. Paul tried to steady himself by gripping the side, but before he could react, the shark charged again. A sickening crunch echoed through the water. A bar snapped loose and the top of the cage was no longer secure. From the surface, Evan and Jenna saw the cage shudder violently. Ryan grabbed the winch controls, ready to pull Paul up, but the shark struck again before he could. The impact sent the cage tilting to one side, the opening now wide enough for something to get inside or for Paul to fall out. Underwater, Paul knew he was in trouble. He tried to stabilize himself, but the motion of the cage had left him unbalanced. The shark was already coming back. In a split second, it rammed forward, its massive head forcing through the damaged section of the cage. Paul had no choice. He had to get out. He pushed off the bars and kicked upward, escaping as the shark entered. But now, he was exposed. There was no barrier between him and the predator. Paul swam toward the surface, kicking as hard as he could. Blood from his scraped arm drifted into the water, a dangerous sign. He knew the moment the shark caught the scent, it would come after him. He was only halfway up when he felt it, a force, sudden and unforgiving. The shark's jaws clamped down on his leg. Pain unlike anything he had ever known shot through his body. The pressure was crushing. He thrashed, desperate to break free, but the shark shook its head, pulling him downward. Blood clouded the water around him. His vision blurred. He knew he was losing too much blood, too fast. On the boat, the crew saw the red billowing through the water. Ryan was already diving in, knife in hand, but he was too far. Paul's body twitched as the shark bit down again, severing muscle and bone. His oxygen regulator slipped from his mouth. His movement slowed. The last thing Paul saw before everything faded was the shadow of the great white circling him one final time. By the time Ryan reached him, there was nothing left to save. The team pulled Paul's lifeless body onto the deck, his wetsuit shredded, his face pale. The shark had vanished. The ocean had taken him. The research expedition ended that day, but the impact of Paul's death rippled through the scientific community. The cage had been reinforced. The safety protocols had been followed, but none of it had mattered. The ocean didn't play by human rules. And on that day, in the deep waters off Stewart Island, the great white had reminded them who truly ruled the sea. September 3, 2015, a group of divers set out from Gansbaai, South Africa, known for its dense population of great white sharks, and the day had started like any other at sea. The weather and water conditions were clear, and the team was excited for another deep dive into shark territory. Among them was 38-year-old Tom Mitchell, an experienced diver with years of open water exploration. He had traveled the world studying marine life, but South Africa's waters had always been his favorite. This time he was joining a team that included his longtime dive partner, Eric Dawson, along with 3 other divers: Mark Lewis, a marine photographer, Victor Rains, a professional guide, and Anna Carter, an adventure enthusiast who had spent months training for this dive. The group planned to explore a site roughly 6 miles off the coast known as Shark Alley. The region was famous for its high population of great white sharks drawn in by large seal colonies. Researchers often studied their behavior in these waters, and it had become a hot spot for both thrill seekers and conservationists. The team was well prepared, using a certified cage diving vessel operated by Captain Henry Collins, an experienced boat operator who had spent most of his life on these waters. The plan was simple: descend to about 60 feet, observe the sharks from a safe distance, document their behavior, and return to the boat in an organized ascent. By midday, the group suited up and began their descent. The water was cold but clear enough to see at least 30 feet ahead. The first few minutes were peaceful. A few smaller fish darted through the reefs below, and the divers kept close together, their flashlights illuminating the deep blue around them. Tom felt at ease, scanning the ocean floor for any movement. 15 minutes in, the first great white appeared. It was massive, easily 15 feet long, gliding through the water just beyond their reach. The group watched in admiration as it moved effortlessly through the currents. A second one appeared not long after, circling in the opposite direction. Tom signaled to Eric, who acknowledged the presence of the sharks but remained calm. Encounters like this weren't unusual. Great whites were naturally curious but rarely aggressive without provocation. Then a third shark appeared. It was even larger, possibly 18 feet long, and its massive body cut through the water as it circled slowly. Unlike the others, this one seemed more deliberate in its approach and calculated in its movements. The divers remained still, following proper protocol. No sudden movements, no erratic gestures. The sharks simply observed them briefly, as if assessing their presence. But something changed. The largest shark moved in closer, and the others followed its lead. The usual curiosity turned into something else, something more aggressive. Tom's breathing grew heavier, his instincts telling him something wasn't right. Sharks rarely attacked without reason, but he knew that changes in behavior could signal danger. The first strike was sudden. The largest shark lunged forward, clamping onto Tom's right leg with terrifying force. The impact was brutal, sending a shockwave of pain through his body. Blood filled the water instantly, spreading like a cloud around them. Eric, just a few feet away, watched in horror as Tom thrashed, struggling to break free. The second shark struck next. As Tom fought to push the first shark away, another came from the side, biting down on his left arm and tearing through his wetsuit. His regulator muffled his screams, but the agony was clear. Eric and Victor tried to intervene, striking at the sharks with their dive knives, but the predators were relentless. The final blow came when the third shark lunged from below, biting into Tom's torso. Within seconds, Tom was being pulled in 3 different directions. The sharks tore into him with horrifying precision, their teeth shredding through flesh and bone. His body twisted unnaturally as they ripped him apart, the water turning into a frenzy of movement. His dive mask slipped off, his oxygen tank dislodging as his body was torn between the 3 massive predators. Eric, frozen in shock, could do nothing but watch. He had seen sharks attack before, but never like this. It wasn't a single bite, a moment of curiosity gone wrong, a full-blown feeding frenzy. The other divers, paralyzed by fear, could only back away, their instincts screaming at them to escape. Victor signaled for an emergency ascent, knowing there was nothing more they could do. They could still see the chaos below as they rose toward the surface. The sharks continued their attack, thrashing violently as they consumed what remained of Tom. By the time the diver broke the surface, gasping for air, there was nothing left of him, only blood spreading in every direction. Captain Henry had already noticed the disturbance from the boat. When he saw the divers break the surface, he knew something had gone wrong. He and his crew hauled them aboard, their faces pale, their bodies trembling. Eric collapsed onto the deck, ripping off his gear, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The crew scrambled to scan the water, hoping to see Tom. But there was nothing. Body, equipment, and nothing to recover. The incident sent shockwaves through the diving community. Experts later speculated that the shark's behavior had been triggered by baiting activity in the area. Tour operators often lure sharks closer to boats using chum, and the lingering scent of blood may have triggered an aggressive response. Others believed the sharks were already in a heightened state of predation when the divers entered the water. Whatever the cause, Tom Mitchell's death stood as one of the most horrifying shark attacks ever recorded. His name was etched into the memories of those who had witnessed it. His final moments a brutal reminder of the ocean's unforgiving nature. The morning of August 7th, 2023, was supposed to be another perfect fishing day for Ben Crawford and his longtime friend Tom Reeves. The two had been deep-sea fishing together for years, often venturing miles off the coast of Florida in search of big catches. That day, they had taken Ben's boat, the Marlin King, out to a well-known fishing spot about 15 miles from Key West. The area was famous for its deep waters, where anglers frequently caught tuna, marlin, and snapper. It was also a place where sharks were known to roam, especially tiger sharks, who often scouted fishing boats drawn by the scent of bait and fish remaining in the water. Ben and Tom set out early, loading their cooler with drinks and fishing gear, hoping for a good catch. By noon, they had already reeled in several large fish, their excitement growing with each successful catch. The sun was high in the sky and the ocean stretched endlessly around them, its surface shimmering in the heat. The two friends cast their lines, laughed, and exchanged stories as they worked. By mid-afternoon, their cooler was nearly full, and Ben decided to start gutting and cleaning some of their fish while Tom continued fishing. As Ben worked, he tossed the fish guts and remains overboard, unaware that the scent of blood was traveling fast through the water. Beneath the surface, a predator was already closing in. Focusing on his fishing rod, Tom suddenly noticed something unusual in the water. A large shadow moved beneath the boat, slow and deliberate. At first, he thought it might be a large fish, but as it came closer, he saw the unmistakable shape of a tiger shark. It was massive, at least 12 feet long, its dark stripes faintly visible beneath the surface. It moved with unsettling calmness, circling the boat as if assessing the situation. Still unaware of the shark, Ben stood near the boat's edge, wiping his hands on his shorts. He leaned over slightly to see if fish were gathering beneath the ship. He dipped his hand somewhat into the water for a second without realizing it. That was all it took. In a sudden violent burst, the tiger shark surged upward. Its massive jaws snapped shut around Ben's right arm, the force nearly pulling him off balance. A scream of pain tore through the air as the shark thrashed, dragging Ben toward the edge. Tom turned just in time to see the horrifying sight. His best friend locked in the jaws of one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. Tom lunged forward, grabbing Ben by his free arm, trying to pull him back. Blood sprayed across the deck as the shark bit down harder, its serrated teeth slicing through muscle and bone. Ben's face twisted in agony, his body jerking violently as the shark pulled him downward. Tom planted his feet and pulled with everything he had, his heart pounding in terror. For a brief moment, the shark let go, its powerful body twisting as it adjusted its grip. Ben collapsed onto the deck, clutching the remains of his arm, now a mangled mess of torn flesh and exposed bone. Blood poured from the wound, staining the deck and dripping into the water, further fueling the predator's aggression. Tom scrambled to grab anything that could stop the bleeding. His hands were shaking as he pressed a towel against the wound, but the bleeding was too severe. Ben's eyes were wide with shock, his breathing rapid and uneven. Then, before either of them could react, the shark struck again. It launched partially out of the water, its jaws locked onto Ben's leg. With terrifying strength, it yanked him over the side of the boat and into the water. The last thing Tom saw was his best friend's horrified expression before he disappeared beneath the waves. Tom screamed, grabbing a gaff hook, desperately stabbing at the water, but it was useless. The water churned violently, turning red as the shark thrashed with its prey. Tom could only watch in helpless terror for what felt like an eternity. Then the thrashing stopped. The ocean grew still except for the ripples left behind. There was no sign of Ben, no movement, no struggle. Only blood spread across the surface, a stark reminder of what had just happened. Tom collapsed onto the deck, his body shaking uncontrollably. His mind refused to process what he had just witnessed. One moment Ben was laughing, cleaning fish, and enjoying the day. The next he had been ripped from the boat, taken by the very ocean they had both loved. With trembling hands, Tom reached for the boat's radio, his voice barely stable as he called for help. The Coast Guard responded immediately, instructing him to stay where he was. Tom sat there, staring at the blood-stained water, unable to do anything but wait. When the Coast Guard arrived, they searched for Ben's body, but there was nothing left to recover. The tiger shark had taken everything. The attack sent shockwaves through the local fishing community. Many fishermen knew the risks of attracting sharks, but no one had expected something so brutal. Experts later speculated that the scent of the fish had drawn in the shark remains, mistaking Ben's hand for an easy meal. Once the initial bite happened, the predator had entered full attack mode, its instincts overriding any chance of survival for Ben. Tom never went fishing again. The boat was sold, and the waters off the Florida coast, once a place of adventure, had become a reminder of the nightmare that had taken his best friend. The morning of July 18, 2024, started as any other for Bethany Beth Caldwell, a 31-year-old swimmer who had spent years training in open water. Living near Cape Cod, Massachusetts, she was no stranger to the ocean's beauty and dangers. She had grown up swimming competitively and later transitioned into endurance training, often pushing herself farther into the Atlantic than most would dare. The waters off Cape Cod were known for their great white shark population, especially in the summer when seals were plentiful, but Beth never let that stop her. That morning she arrived at Nauset Beach before sunrise, the sand still cool beneath her feet. It was a routine she had followed for years. The early morning calm, with few people around, made it the perfect time to swim. The ocean, though unpredictable, felt like home to her. She stretched briefly before adjusting her swim cap and goggles. Her friend and occasional training partner, Daniel Hayes, was supposed to join her, but he had messaged earlier that he wasn't feeling well. That left Beth alone, but she was used to solitude in the water. She waded in, feeling the familiar chill of the Atlantic rush over her skin. The water was calm, with only gentle waves lapping at the shore. She began her swim, and her strokes were smooth and rhythmic. Her breathing was controlled, and her focus was on distance rather than speed. She aimed to push herself farther than usual, beyond the shallows where most casual swimmers stayed. She had done similar swims before, but the air felt different today. Cape Cod has long been a hotspot for great white sharks, drawn by the large seal population. Researchers have documented increased shark activity over the years, and swimmers are always advised to stay close to shore. Signs warning of sharks are posted along the beaches, but Beth has never encountered one in all her years of swimming. She has read stories and seen footage of sharks patrolling the waters, but they have remained distant. She paused as she reached nearly a mile offshore, treading water to check her surroundings. The coastline was still visible, but the beachgoers were distant figures, unaware of how far she had gone. She took a deep breath and turned to continue, but something caught her eye. Below her, a shadow moved. It was slow, deliberate. At first she thought it was a large fish, but then she saw the unmistakable outline of a dorsal fin. Her heart pounded as she realized what it was. A great white shark, easily over 10 feet long. It had appeared silently, its movement calculated, gliding just beneath her. Her instincts told her to remain still, not to thrash or panic. She floated, her mind racing, trying to recall everything she had ever learned about shark behavior. The shark circled once, then moved away, disappearing into the depths. Beth exhaled, relief washing over her. Maybe it had been curious and decided she wasn't food. For a moment she thought she was safe. She turned toward shore, swimming steadily and controlling her movements. Every few strokes, she glanced over her shoulder, scanning the water. The shadow was gone, and she forced herself to stay calm. She was still nearly a mile from shore, and panic would drain her energy faster. Then, a sudden surge in the water behind her sent a shockwave of fear through her body. The shark had returned. It was closer, moving faster this time. Before she could react, a force slammed into her side, knocking the breath from her lungs. Pain exploded through her right leg as teeth clamped down just above her knee. She barely registered the shock before the shark thrashed, pulling her under. Her vision blurred as salt water filled her nose and mouth. Instinct took over, and she kicked with her free leg, desperate to break free. The shark released her suddenly, startled by her resistance or momentarily distracted. She surged to the surface, gasping for air, her heart pounding wildly. Blood clouded the water around her, a deep red spreading through the blue. The pain in her leg was unbearable, but she forced herself to move. The shoreline looked impossibly far, but she had no choice but to swim. She knew she was bleeding heavily, and the fear of attracting more sharks only added to her desperation. She pushed forward, using mostly her arms, her injured leg barely able to function. Every stroke felt slower, her strength draining with each passing second. She tried to focus on reaching the shore, but exhaustion pressed down on her. Then another movement below. The shark wasn't finished. It circled again, drawn back by the scent of blood in the water. She felt the current shift as it moved closer. Her body screamed to go faster, but she could barely keep herself afloat. A sharp pull on her left leg sent her underwater again. The shark had latched on, its jaws crushing down with brutal force. A violent shake sent fresh agony through her body. Darkness crept into the edges of her vision. She tried to fight, to resist, but her body was giving out. She surfaced one last time, gasping, her arms flailing weakly. The beach was still so far away. The people there had no idea what was happening, how close she was to being lost. She tried to call for help, but no sound came. The world tilted as her strength failed. Her body sank, the water closing over her. The ocean had claimed her. The shark, satisfied or simply following instinct, let go, leaving only silence in its wake. The waves carried her motionless body toward shore, but by the time she was found, nothing was left to save. Beth had always believed she understood the ocean, but on that day, it had reminded her of something brutal. Once it decides to take you, there is no escape. Dmitry Ivanov had been looking forward to this vacation for months. After wrapping up a grueling filming schedule in Moscow, He craved an escape, something thrilling, something different. Hawaii seemed like the perfect place. The sun, the ocean, and the sense of adventure drew him in. He had spent the past few days relaxing at a luxury resort on Oahu, enjoying the beaches, the local cuisine, and the quiet moments away from the cameras. On the morning of March 10th, 2025, Dmitry woke up feeling restless. The resort was beautiful, but he needed more than just lounging on the beach. He wanted action. That was when he decided to rent a jet ski and explore the waters off the coast. He had done it a few times before on vacation, and he loved the rush of speed as he raced across the open water. By late morning, he arrived at a rental shop near Waikiki Beach. The place was buzzing with tourists gearing up for various water activities: parasailing, paddleboarding, snorkeling. Dmitry, wanting to avoid the crowds, opted for a solo ride farther from shore. The rental shop assistant, Jason Rivera, handed him a life jacket and explained the safety rules. Dmitry listened, though his mind was already out on the water. Within minutes, he was on the jet ski, pushing it to its limits. The roar of the engine and the spray of salt water against his face made him feel alive. He zigzagged through the waves, feeling the power of the machine beneath him. The coastline stretched behind him as he ventured farther out where the water was deeper and the waves rolled smoothly. Everything felt perfect, until he noticed something unusual. At first, it was just a ripple in the water, nothing alarming. But then a shadow appeared beneath the surface. It was massive, moving with an eerie stillness just below him. Dmitry slowed the jet ski slightly, peering into the deep blue. A second later, the water seemed to swell unnaturally. Then came the impact. A sudden jolt sent shockwaves through the jet ski as something rammed into it from below. Dmitry lost control, the handlebars jerking wildly in his grip. He barely had time to process what had happened before another powerful hit struck the rear of the jet ski. This time, the force sent him flying. The moment he hit the water, panic surged through him. He gasped, trying to keep his head above the waves as he turned to see what had attacked. That was when he saw it. A great white shark, at least 18 feet long, its dorsal fin slicing through the surface. Dmitry's heart pounded. His training as an actor had prepared him for intense action scenes, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The shark was circling him, moving with deadly precision. He knew he had only seconds to react. Adrenaline took over. He kicked his legs, propelling himself toward the overturned jet ski. Every stroke felt like an eternity. The water around him felt heavier, his body slower, as fear tightened around his chest. He reached the jet ski, gripping the side desperately, his hand slipping against the wet surface. The shark closed in. Its massive head broke the surface and its black eyes locked onto him. Dmitry scrambled, using every ounce of strength to pull himself onto the jet ski. His arms burned and his breath came in ragged gasps, but he didn't stop. Just as he hauled himself up, the shark lunged. Its powerful jaws clamped down where he had been only seconds before, splintering the side of the jet ski. The impact rocked the vehicle violently, nearly sending Dmitry back into the water. He clung to the handlebars, his fingers numb from the cold and shock. He had no time to think, only to act. His body moved on instinct, shifting his weight forward, trying to stabilize the jet ski. The engine sputtered, the damage from the attack affecting its performance. Dmitry pressed the throttle, praying it would still work. The jet ski jerked forward. Relief flooded him as the engine roared back to life, but the shark was still there, chasing him, its massive body gliding just beneath the surface. He could see its shadow keeping pace with him, waiting for another opening. Then, through the haze of panic, he heard something, a voice calling out from a nearby boat. A few hundred feet away, a small fishing vessel had spotted the commotion. The crew, made up of two locals, Alex Makoa and Ben Foster, had been pulling in nets when they saw Dmitry's struggle. Without hesitation, they steered toward him, waving their arms, signaling for him to head their way. Dmitry didn't hesitate. He turned sharply, gunning the throttle, pushing the jet ski as fast as it could go. The shark was relentless, but he was getting closer to the boat. The fisherman, realizing the danger, grabbed a long pole and began slamming it against the side of the boat, hoping the noise would deter the predator. Just as Dmitry reached the boat, the shark surged forward again, its head breaking the surface, jaws snapping shut just inches from the back of the jet ski. The fisherman acted fast. Ben reached out, grabbing Dimitri's arm as Alex swung a metal gaff pole into the water, striking the shark's snout. Dimitri felt hands pulling him up, his body hitting the deck of the boat. He rolled onto his back, gasping for breath, his muscles shaking from exhaustion. He turned his head just in time to see the shark lingering for a moment before finally disappearing into the depths. For several minutes, no one spoke. The only sound was the crashing of waves and Dimitri's ragged breathing. His arms and legs were covered in scrapes from his struggle to climb onto the jet ski. His back ached from the impact of hitting the water, and his heart was still pounding as if it might burst from his chest. Alex steered the boat back toward shore while Ben grabbed a first aid kit, tending to Dimitri's wounds. It wasn't until they reached the harbor that the reality of what had happened fully sank in. Word of the attack spread fast. By the time Dimitri was back at the resort, reporters were already waiting, eager to hear about the encounter. Despite the pain, the exhaustion, and the fear still lingering in his mind, he knew one thing: he was lucky to be alive. The incident became international news, not just in Russia, where Dimitri was a well-known celebrity, but across the world. Experts weighed in, discussing the rare but terrifying reality of great white shark attacks on jet skiers. Locals debated whether more safety measures should be enforced for tourists engaging in high-speed water sports. For Dimitri, the experience changed everything. He had faced death and survived, but the ocean, once a place of beauty and adventure, had shown him a side he would never forget. Morning of August 17, 2021. The United States Coast Guard cutter Marlin patrolled the cold waters off the coast of Northern California. The crew was performing routine inspections, scanning for illegal fishing activity, and responding to distress calls. These waters were unpredictable: strong currents, sudden weather shifts, and most notably, large marine predators. Great white sharks had dominated these waters for centuries, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for their next opportunity to strike. The crew of Marlin was aware of the risks, but no one expected that this patrol would end in one of the most shocking and tragic incidents in Coast Guard history. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Lucas, 38, had served in the Coast Guard for nearly 2 decades. He was a seasoned officer, known for his level-headedness under pressure. That day, he led a team of 5. Petty Officer Ryan Connor, Seaman Jacob Ellis, Lieutenant Sarah Klein, Engineer Matthew Delgado, and boatswain's mate Chris Ramirez. Each of them had spent years at sea, handling high-risk rescues and emergency responses, but they had never encountered anything like what was about to unfold. At approximately 10:30 a.m., Marlin received a distress call from a small fishing vessel, the Bay Runner, drifting aimlessly about 10 miles offshore. The message was brief and broken up by static: engine failure, no power, and a crew stranded with no way to navigate back to shore. The captain of the Bay Runner, Mark Holloway, sounded calm but concerned. He had 3 deckhands on board and no radio backup. By noon, Marlin reached the vessel. The fishing boat sat eerily still, bobbing with the waves. Its motor was silent, and the deck looked abandoned. Holloway and his crew emerged from the cabin as the Coast Guard boat neared. They waved, relieved to see help arriving. Chief Lucas ordered the team into action. Connor and Ellis prepared the towing lines while Lucas and Delgado got ready to board the Bay Runner to inspect the issue. Lucas suited up, strapping on his equipment before stepping toward the edge of Marlin. He planned to check below the boat for any obstructions before securing it for towing. The water here was deep, nearly 200 feet, plenty of space for large predators. But in all his years in service, Lucas had never worried about sharks. As he descended the small metal ladder on the side of Marlin, his hands gripped the rungs firmly. The crew above watched as he dropped into the water, treading carefully as he prepared to dive below. His radio crackled in his ear as Delgado asked for updates. The moment Lucas submerged, the water felt unnervingly still. He took a deep breath, diving under to check the hull. The fishing boat's propeller was tangled in thick seaweed. He signaled that it would take a few minutes to clear. Above, Ellis leaned over the rail, scanning the water. He had an uneasy feeling. He had spent years in these waters, and something felt wrong. Then, just past the fishing boat, he saw it. A massive great white shark, at least 18 feet long, glided through the water, moving toward Lucas. Ellis shouted, trying to alert him, but it was too late. Without warning, the shark surged forward, its powerful body cutting through the water in seconds. It struck with such force that Lucas was ripped from the side of the boat. A rush of bubbles exploded to the surface as the crew above scrambled into action. Lucas felt the impact before he saw the predator. His leg was in the shark's jaws. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. He fought instinctively, twisting and punching at the shark's snout, but its grip was too strong. Blood clouded the water, drawing the predator into a frenzy. Above, Connor and Ellis grabbed emergency poles, trying to reach him. Delgado activated the alarm while Klein radioed for emergency backup. Lucas struggled, trying to break free. The shark released him for a brief moment, circling back, preparing for another strike. He kicked desperately, forcing himself toward the boat. His head broke the surface, and he gasped for air, his arms reaching toward Marlin. Ellis was there, his hand outstretched, fingers gripping Lucas's wrist. Then the shark struck again. This time it clamped onto Lucas's torso. The force of the attack pulled him back under. Ellis lost his grip, nearly falling overboard. Blood spread rapidly through the water as Lucas disappeared into the deep. The deck of Marlin erupted into chaos. Delgado grabbed the rifle kept on board for emergencies, aiming into the water and firing shots near the shark in an attempt to scare it off. The rounds barely made a difference. The shark, frenzied by the blood, refused to let go. Seconds felt like hours. The crew refused to give up. Then, as suddenly as it had attacked, the shark let go. Lucas's body floated toward the surface. He wasn't moving. Ellis and Connor hauled him onto the deck, laying him flat. Blood poured from the wounds, deep lacerations to his abdomen and leg. His pulse was weak and his breath was shallow. Delgado applied pressure, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was severe. Klein shouted over the radio, demanding immediate medical evacuation. The nearest air rescue was still 20 minutes away. Lucas's eyes flickered open for a moment. His lips moved as if trying to say something, but no words came out. His fingers twitched before his body went still. Ellis pressed against his chest, beginning cardiopulmonary resuscitation, refusing to accept what was happening. The crew worked desperately, but the injuries were too severe. By the time the rescue helicopter arrived, Lucas was gone. The team sat in stunned silence. The ocean had taken one of their own. Marlin returned to shore with a flag at half-mast. The news of Lucas's death sent shockwaves through the Coast Guard. Great white sharks were always a presence in these waters, but never had they attacked with such aggression against a trained officer during an operation. There were questions. Why had the shark attacked so violently? Was it an accident, a mistaken identity, or was something else at play? Experts debated for weeks. Some believed that overfishing had driven sharks closer to shore, making them more desperate for food. Others pointed out that great whites were unpredictable and their behavior was never fully understood. For the men and women of Marlin, none of that mattered. They had lost a friend, a leader, a brother in arms, and the waters of Northern California would never feel the same. August 17, 2020, the sun shone over the crystal-clear waters of the Maldives. The luxurious Blue Haven Resort, located on a private island, was known for its seclusion, white sand beaches, and vibrant coral reefs. It was the perfect getaway for celebrities seeking privacy. Among the guests that week were Daniel Carter, a 34-year-old film producer from the United States, and his new wife, Emma Carter, a 29-year-old model. They had arrived 2 days earlier for their honeymoon, eager to enjoy their time away from the public eye. Daniel and Emma had spent the first day exploring the resort's facilities, enjoying spa treatments, and dining at an exclusive overwater restaurant. On their second day, they booked a private snorkeling excursion, hoping to swim among the colorful fish and experience the beauty of the coral reefs. A resort guide, Samuel Patel, took them out on a small boat, explaining the best areas for snorkeling. The waters around the Maldives were home to many species of sharks, including blacktip and whitetip reef sharks. These sharks were usually non-aggressive toward humans, often curious but not dangerous. Attacks were rare, and tourists frequently swam among them without concern. That day, the couple had been assured that snorkeling in the lagoon was completely safe. At midday, Samuel anchored the boat in a calm area just beyond the resort's main beach. The sun reflected off the water as Daniel and Emma put on their snorkeling masks and fins. Excited, they slid into the warm ocean, floating above the reef. Schools of fish darted beneath them, and the coral glowed in shades of blue and green. Daniel reached for his underwater camera, eager to capture the beauty of the scene. The couple swam side by side, staying within sight of the boat. They watched as a sea turtle glided past, its slow movements peaceful. Small reef sharks could be seen in the distance, their sleek bodies weaving through the coral. They had been told that these sharks were harmless, and for a while, everything felt perfect. Then Daniel noticed something moving quickly in the water. A reef shark larger than the others had appeared from the deeper part of the lagoon. It circled once before swimming toward them. Emma, unaware of the shark's presence, continued floating, admiring the fish. Daniel, however, felt uneasy. The shark's movements were different, less graceful, more erratic. Before he could react, the shark darted forward. In a flash, it bit down on Daniel's leg. A surge of pain shot through his body and the water around him turned red. His body twisted as he struggled, his mask filling with water. Emma heard a splash and turned, her eyes widening in horror at the sight of her husband thrashing. Panic set in. Emma swam toward him, grabbing his arm as he fought to keep his head above water. Daniel's leg was torn open, blood spreading fast. He tried to kick, but the pain was overwhelming. The shark, sensing weakness, circled back. From the boat, Samuel saw the attack unfolding. He grabbed a pole and shouted for them to swim back. Emma, desperate, pulled Daniel toward the boat, but he was too weak to move quickly. The shark returned, charging at Daniel's wounded leg. With another powerful bite, it tore deeper into his flesh. Daniel's scream echoed above the waves. Emma refused to let go. She wrapped her arms around Daniel, kicking toward the boat with every ounce of strength she had left. Samuel leaned over, extending his hand, trying to pull them in. Just as they reached the side of the boat, the shark struck again. This time, Daniel's body went limp. The blood loss was too severe. Samuel dragged Emma onto the boat, her hand still gripping Daniel's lifeless arm. He pulled Daniel up as much as he could, but the weight was too much, and the boat rocked dangerously. Emma screamed for help, but the reality was sinking in. Daniel was gone. The water around them was now a deep shade of red, the shark still circling below. Samuel pressed the emergency radio, calling the resort for immediate medical assistance. Within minutes, another boat arrived, carrying staff members and a medic. They pulled Daniel onto the deck, trying to revive him, but it was too late. Emma collapsed in shock, her body trembling. The ocean, once a place of beauty, had turned into a scene of horror. The trip that was supposed to be the beginning of their new life together had ended in tragedy. The resort staff quickly took Emma back to shore, shielding her from the gathering guests who had heard the news. Daniel's body was wrapped and transported to the nearest medical facility, where his death was confirmed. Word of the attack spread fast. News outlets picked up the story, and social media exploded with reactions. Tourists questioned the safety of the waters, and bookings at the resort dropped dramatically. Officials from the Maldives launched an investigation, but experts could only conclude that the shark had been startled, possibly mistaking Daniel's movements for prey. The once idyllic resort, known for its exclusivity and luxury, now carried a dark shadow over its name. And for Emma, the ocean would never feel safe again. On June 15, 2024, the Davis family was enjoying a perfect sunny afternoon aboard their small family boat off the coast of Monterey Bay, California. The gentle waves sparkled beneath the clear sky, and seabirds circled overhead. It was exactly the type of day the family loved spending together. 12-year-old Emily Davis was particularly excited. She had just finished 6th grade, earning a special award for her excellent grades. Emily loved animals, especially dolphins, and dreamed of becoming a marine biologist someday. Her room at home was filled with books about ocean creatures, colorful drawings, and models of dolphins and whales. Emily was bright, cheerful, and always curious about the sea. Emily's father, Mark Davis, 40, worked as an auto mechanic in Santa Cruz. He had taught Emily how to swim when she was 4. Mark loved the water, and the two often went snorkeling together. Her mother, Laura Davis, 38, was a nurse at a local hospital. Laura spent most of her free time gardening or reading books, but enjoyed their family weekend boat trips. Emily's younger brother, Ben, who was 9, liked watching dolphins and collecting shells. The family was close-knit, always looking forward to their weekend adventures. The boat was anchored about half a mile from shore. Emily sat at the boat's edge, letting her feet dangle into the cool water. She laughed as fish swam close, occasionally splashing her toes. Ben, sitting beside her, watched the ocean eagerly. Everything seemed calm until suddenly the water beneath them moved strangely. The fish quickly scattered, disappearing in an instant. Emily paused, confused by the sudden quietness of the ocean. Without any warning, a massive 17-foot great white shark surged upward, its jaws opening wide as it bit violently into Emily's leg, slicing deeply into her skin and muscle. Blood immediately stained the water as the powerful shark dragged her from the boat, pulling her under. Mark and Laura stood up quickly, their eyes wide with terror. Mark jumped into action without thinking. He grabbed a rope kept at the side of the boat and threw it desperately into the water near where Emily had vanished. Seconds passed like hours. Emily finally surfaced, gasping for air, thrashing weakly. Her leg was bleeding badly, torn and severely injured by the shark's powerful bite. She reached for the rope, her fingers gripping it tightly as Mark pulled with all his strength. The shark circled again, but Mark refused to let go. With a strong pull, he managed to lift Emily onto the deck. She lay on the boat, crying from pain, her leg seriously injured and covered in blood. The ocean was still, and no sign of the shark remained. Laura quickly began trying to stop the bleeding, wrapping her daughter's leg tightly with towels. Ben watched, frozen with shock, as Mark frantically radioed for help. The ocean turned from joy to terror and sadness in moments. Emily lay quietly, shaking from shock as her family desperately waited for rescue. The rescue boat arrived quickly, racing toward the Davis family ship. Paramedics carefully lifted Emily onto their vessel, immediately treating her serious wounds. Emily's leg was badly damaged, torn deeply from the shark's powerful bite. She remained awake but weak, losing blood quickly. Mark and Laura held each other tightly, comforting Ben as they watched their daughter being treated. Their happy day had become a painful nightmare. Emily was rushed to a nearby hospital in Monterey, where doctors began immediate surgery. At the hospital, news spread quickly. Friends and neighbors gathered, hoping and praying for Emily's recovery. Doctors worked for hours, carefully repairing the damage caused by the shark. Emily survived, but the injury to her leg was severe. Surgeons told her parents that she would need many months of physical therapy before she could walk again. The attack shocked everyone along the California coast. The beaches nearby quickly posted new signs warning about sharks. Local officials spoke on television reminding people to be alert while enjoying the ocean. Shark experts explained that great white sharks often lived near the area, but attacks were still very rare. They believed the shark had mistaken Emily for a seal or other prey. After the accident, Emily spent weeks in the hospital. Her recovery was long, but her spirit remained strong. Her family stayed by her every day, helping her through tough times. Emily continued reading her marine biology books, determined to learn more about sharks and the ocean. Mark felt deeply affected by what had happened. He struggled with memories of that frightening moment, haunted by thoughts of almost losing Emily. Still, he felt grateful that his quick actions had saved her life. In the community, people became more cautious around the ocean. Schools began teaching special classes on shark safety, helping kids understand how to stay safe while swimming. The beaches near Monterey Bay increased safety patrols, adding boats and lifeguards to watch carefully for any signs of danger. Emily eventually returned home, slowly adjusting to life after the attack. She had to use crutches initially, but her determination inspired everyone around her. People who heard her story sent letters, cards, and gifts, offering support. Her courage strengthened her family and community, bringing everyone closer together. Months later, Emily stood proudly at the beach again. Though she no longer entered the water, she had become an advocate for shark safety, telling others about her experience and teaching them to respect and understand these powerful ocean creatures. Life had changed forever for the Davis family, but through the fear and pain, they found strength in each other. Emily's terrifying experience reminded everyone how quickly happiness could turn to tragedy, but it also showed how courage, love, and community support could help heal even the deepest wounds. The ocean continued to move gently, unchanged, but thanks to Emily's brave story, it was filled with caution and awareness. May 10th, 2023. The waters near Fort Lauderdale, Florida, sparkled under the warm afternoon sun. Gentle waves rocked a small fishing boat about a mile off the coastline. It was a peaceful day, ideal for relaxing and catching fish. Aboard the boat was Brian Walker, a 40-year-old fisherman from Fort Lauderdale. Brian had spent nearly his entire life near the ocean. Growing up in Florida, he learned to fish from his father, who owned a small bait and tackle shop. Brian spent hours casting lines into the sea as a young boy, hoping for a big catch. Fishing wasn't just a hobby, it was Brian's passion. He knew the ocean better than anyone else in his community. Friends often called Brian for advice on the best fishing spots, knowing he could always lead them to the perfect place. He loved teaching others about fishing and marine life, often volunteering to teach local children how to fish safely. Brian had a wife and 2 young children who often joined him on fishing trips. But on this particular afternoon, Brian had decided to fish with 2 close friends, Mark and Stephen. They had planned this trip for weeks, looking forward to spending a few quiet hours together away from their busy lives. The afternoon started well. The friends joked and laughed as they set up their fishing gear. Brian prepared his fishing rod, carefully attaching the bait. He smiled as he cast his line into the calm, clear water, watching it sink below the surface. It seemed like just another perfect day, but beneath the surface, danger waited. Without any warning, a large shadow moved swiftly beneath the boat. Brian noticed a sudden splash nearby but didn't see anything unusual. He calmly continued fishing, his eyes fixed on his line, waiting patiently for a bite. Suddenly, the calm atmosphere changed into chaos. At least 12 feet long, a huge hammerhead shark lunged upward from beneath the water. Its powerful jaws closed violently around Brian's leg, digging deep into his flesh and muscle. Brian yelled in pain and shock, dropping his fishing rod into the ocean. Mark and Stephen jumped to their feet, frozen momentarily by the sudden and terrifying attack. They watched helplessly as Brian struggled against the shark, gripping the side of the boat tightly, trying desperately to stay on board. But the hammerhead shark was stronger, yanking Brian with enormous force. Unable to hold on any longer, Brian slipped overboard into the water. His friends screamed and rushed to grab him, but he quickly disappeared below the surface. Underwater, Brian fought desperately, kicking and punching at the shark, but the hammerhead held tight, its teeth tearing deeper into his injured leg. Blood clouded the water, making it impossible for Brian to see. Above, his friends panicked, searching for any sign of their friend. Brian briefly resurfaced, coughing and gasping for air. Mark and Stephen reached out, stretching as far as they could, hoping to grab his hands. But in an instant, the shark attacked again, biting violently into Brian's torso and pulling him back beneath the waves. The water around the boat turned bright red, spreading quickly across the surface. Mark and Stephen stared in disbelief and horror. They called desperately for help on the radio, their voices panicked. But Brian was already gone, pulled deep beneath the surface by the powerful predator. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, hoping Brian might somehow escape. But he never resurfaced. The ocean around them was calm again, as if nothing had happened. The friends sat in silence, filled with fear and grief, waiting helplessly for rescue boats to arrive. Below, hidden in the dark ocean, the shark vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only fear and unanswered questions. Rescue boats quickly arrived at the scene, sirens loud against the quiet ocean. Emergency crews searched carefully, scanning the waves for any sign of Brian. His friends, Mark and Stephen, sat silently on their boat, their faces pale and full of sadness. They watched the rescuers move quickly, hoping for a miracle. After hours of searching, divers finally found Brian. His body was floating silently beneath the surface, showing clear and fatal bite wounds on his leg and torso. The rescuers gently brought him aboard their boat, carefully covering him with a white cloth. The tragic news quickly spread, reaching Brian's family and the entire Fort Lauderdale community. When Brian's family heard what had happened, they were devastated. His wife, Laura, felt as if her world had suddenly ended. His 2 young children, Emily and Jack, struggled to understand the painful truth. They would never see their father again, join him on another fishing trip, or hear his laughter fill their home. The community shared the family's deep sadness. Friends gathered around Laura and the children, offering comfort and support. Brian was remembered fondly as someone who always helped others. His love for fishing and teaching made him well known and respected throughout Fort Lauderdale. The tragic shark attack also raised many questions about safety. Local fishermen became nervous, unsure if their homes' waters were safe. Shark attacks, especially by hammerheads, were very rare in the area. People wanted to understand why this attack had happened and how to prevent future incidents. Marine experts explained that hammerhead sharks usually avoided humans. Attacks often happen by mistake, with the shark thinking a person is food. They suggested the shark might have chased fish near Brian's boat, causing the sudden and aggressive attack. Even though experts tried to explain, people remained frightened. Local authorities quickly reacted. New warning signs were placed along beaches and popular fishing spots, clearly marking shark sightings. Fishermen received safety advice. reminding them to stay alert while fishing offshore. Schools began teaching children about ocean safety, hoping to avoid more tragedies. For months, Brian's family and friends struggled to accept his loss. The space he left in their lives could never be filled. His children often visited the ocean, standing quietly by the shore, remembering their father. Laura became active in teaching others about fishing safety, trying to protect other families from feeling her pain. Over time, people began returning to the ocean. Fishermen slowly regained confidence, understanding that shark attacks, though terrible, were very uncommon. But no one in Fort Lauderdale ever forgot Brian Walker. A small memorial was placed near the shore, reminding everyone of his kindness and passion for fishing. Brian's story became a lesson for the community. It taught respect for nature and the ocean's hidden dangers. Even though life moved forward, Brian's memory remained strong, a reminder to always stay alert and careful in the waters he loved so much. January 9, 2022. The ocean near Guadalupe Island, Mexico was calm. A gentle breeze blew softly across the clear blue water. The island is famous for shark cage diving, attracting tourists worldwide who want to see great white sharks up close. Among those tourists was Eric Lawson, a 28-year-old schoolteacher from Austin, Texas. Eric had always loved adventure. He enjoyed hiking, skydiving, and exploring new places. Friends described him as friendly and fearless, who never backed down from exciting experiences. He had come to Mexico with his girlfriend Sarah and two close friends, hoping for an unforgettable vacation. Eric and his friends booked their dive trip months earlier, excited to see great white sharks safely from inside a metal cage. The diving company assured them it was safe, explaining that tourists worldwide visited without problems yearly. On the morning of their dive, the boat traveled several miles offshore to reach the best shark watching area. Eric laughed and joked with his friends, thrilled as he prepared for the dive. The crew carefully explained safety instructions, reminding everyone to remain calm inside the cage. Soon, Eric put on his diving gear and stepped into the metal cage. The cage slowly lowered into the ocean, gently rising bubbles around it. Eric felt his excitement grow as he waited beneath the waves, eager to spot his first shark. His friends watched from the boat, taking photos and smiling happily. A few moments later, the first shark appeared. It was enormous, nearly 17 feet long, swimming slowly nearby. Eric watched in awe, amazed by the shark's power and beauty. The shark circled quietly at first, calmly swimming around the cage without showing aggression. But suddenly, everything changed. The great white shark turned sharply and swam fast toward the cage without warning. Eric felt his heart race and suddenly felt nervous. The shark moved with incredible speed, heading straight for him. The cage shook violently as the massive shark rammed into it with great force. The impact was so powerful that the metal bars bent slightly, creating a small opening. Eric's eyes widened with fear. He had no time to move or think clearly. In an instant, the shark forced its huge body through the gap in the cage. Eric tried to back away, but the cage was too small, and the shark's powerful jaws closed tightly onto his leg, biting deeply into his flesh. Water filled with blood quickly, surrounding Eric as he struggled desperately. Above the surface, crew members saw the cage shaking violently. They immediately realized something was wrong. They rushed to raise the cage, pulling frantically at the ropes. Below, Eric fought hard, pushing against the shark. The predator thrashed wildly, shaking Eric like a toy, causing severe injuries to his leg. Eric reached out, hoping the cage would rise faster. But the shark was stronger, pulling Eric into the dark depths below. The cage rose quickly, breaking the water surface, but Eric was no longer inside. Everyone stared in horror, realizing Eric had disappeared beneath the waves. Crew members quickly began searching the water, desperate to find Eric. They shouted, scanning the waves. Eric's friends stood frozen in shock, unable to believe what had happened. Sarah began to cry softly, feeling helpless and terrified. Divers jumped into the ocean, looking frantically beneath the surface. Boats circled the area carefully, crews hoping for any sign of Eric. Minutes passed slowly, each one feeling longer than the last. But Eric was nowhere to be found. After nearly 2 hours, rescue divers discovered Eric's diving gear, damaged and floating alone. Eric's body was never found, lost forever in the deep ocean. Everyone realized sadly that Eric had died, dragged beneath the waves by the powerful shark. The tragic news spread quickly. Eric's family in Texas received the heartbreaking call, feeling their world collapse. His parents struggled to accept their son's sudden loss, grieving deeply for the adventurous and cheerful young man they loved so much. The diving company faced serious safety concerns. Authorities began investigating and demanding answers about how the cage failed. They studied the metal cage carefully, finding it had bent under the shark's powerful force, something no one thought possible. Soon, other tourists canceled their shark dives, feeling afraid after hearing Eric's story. Local businesses suffered as visitors avoided cage diving trips altogether. People around the world learned of the tragedy and were shocked that such an adventure could turn deadly so quickly. Marine experts explained how unusual it was for a shark to enter a cage. They believed the great white shark acted aggressively because it felt trapped and scared. Despite these explanations, fear grew, making tourists nervous about entering shark-filled waters. Eric's friends returned home, forever changed by what they had witnessed. Sarah especially felt deeply shaken, haunted by memories of Eric's final moments. She sought counseling, struggling with sadness and nightmares about sharks. Her love for adventure disappeared completely. Months passed, but Eric's tragic death was never forgotten. Safety rules changed, with diving companies using stronger cages and stricter guidelines to protect tourists. Eric's story became a powerful reminder of the dangers beneath the ocean's surface. Back home in Austin, Eric's family created a memorial in his honor. Friends and neighbors visited regularly, sharing stories of Eric's kindness, humor, and love for life. His parents hoped the memorial would remind others always to be careful, even when seeking excitement. Over time, tourists slowly returned to cage diving, though more cautiously. Eric's death shows clearly how unpredictable nature can be. Visitors to Guadalupe Island remembered Eric's story, treating sharks with more respect and caution. Although Eric is gone, his story helped make diving safer for others. People learned important lessons about respect, caution, and preparation. The ocean remained beautiful, but Eric's story taught everyone how quickly joy could become tragedy. He was remembered not just for his bravery, but also for the lasting impact he had on ocean safety, protecting others from facing the same terrifying end. The morning of March 5th, 2025, was calm along the shores of Monterey Bay, California. The sky was clear, the water was inviting, and 5 friends, Daniel Carter, Emily Lawson, Jason Miller, Olivia Perez, and Marcus Bennett, set out for a swim. They had been planning this trip for weeks, eager to take a break from their busy lives and enjoy the ocean together. None of them knew they were about to make a fatal mistake that would cost all their lives. The group had arrived at the beach just after sunrise. It was a weekday, meaning fewer crowds, making it the perfect time for a peaceful swim. They parked their cars, tossed their towels onto the sand, and stood at the water's edge, feeling the waves lap at their feet. The water was a little chilly, but they were used to it. Monterey Bay, known for its diverse marine life, was home to sea lions, dolphins, and great white sharks. But sharks were rarely a concern for swimmers this close to shore. Attacks were uncommon, and they had all been in the ocean enough times to feel comfortable. Unbeknownst to them, just half a mile offshore, a fishing boat was discarding fish guts and blood into the water. The Ocean's Bounty crew had been out since the early hours, hauling in a large catch of rockfish and halibut. As they cleaned their fish, they tossed the waste overboard. The smell of blood spread quickly through the water, attracting attention from predators below. The 5 friends waded in, laughing as the cold water reached their waists. They swam out farther, enjoying the freedom of the open ocean, completely unaware of the invisible danger surrounding them. The scent of fish remains had traveled through the currents, sending signals to one of the most efficient hunters of the sea, a great white shark. The predator had been lurking in deeper waters when it caught the scent. Measuring over 17 feet long, it was a fully grown adult, capable of launching itself at prey with astonishing speed. It followed the trail, its powerful body slicing through the water as it moved toward the shallows. To the shark, there was no distinction between discarded fish and the 5 swimmers. All it detected was movement and the scent of food. Daniel was the first to notice something was off. He had been floating on his back, eyes closed, when he suddenly felt a shift in the water beneath him. It was subtle, just a change in current, but enough to make him uneasy. He turned to look at the others, who were still chatting, unaware. He opened his mouth to say something, but before the words could leave his lips, the attack happened. Without warning, the water beneath him erupted in a violent burst. A massive force slammed into him, knocking the air from his lungs. A split second later, searing pain shot through his body as the shark's jaws clamped down on his torso. The impact was so sudden and forceful that Daniel had no time to react. One moment he was there. The next, he was being pulled under. The others heard the splash and turned just in time to see the water churn red. Emily screamed. Jason froze, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Olivia and Marcus instinctively started swimming toward shore, but panic set in. The shark was still there, moving swiftly beneath them and circling. Jason barely had time to register the loss of his friend before the predator struck again. The shark came from below, its jaws wide, its eyes black and lifeless. It clamped down on Jason's leg and yanked him beneath the surface. The water exploded in another spray of crimson as Jason's muffled scream was cut short. Emily saw it all happen just a few feet away from her. She turned, frantically paddling toward Olivia and Marcus. But the shark wasn't finished. It came again, its instincts in full attack mode. It lunged at Emily, grabbing her midsection and dragging her down. Her arms thrashed for a moment before she disappeared completely. Olivia and Marcus were the last two left, their strokes wild and desperate. They had made it closer to shore but were still far from safety. Marcus was swimming as fast as he could, his breath ragged, his arms burning from exhaustion. Olivia was right beside him, her eyes wide with terror. The shoreline was getting closer. Then Olivia felt something brush against her leg. Her mind barely had time to process what it was before pain ripped through her. The shark had returned for its fourth victim, grabbing Olivia's leg and pulling her back. She let out a choked scream, reaching for Marcus, but the force was too strong. She was yanked under, her arms flailing for only a few seconds before the water turned dark with her blood. Marcus kept swimming. His lungs burned, and his heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. He could see the beach, sand, and safety ahead. Desperate to escape, he pushed harder, his mind refusing to acknowledge that he was the last one left. Then the shark struck one final time. A sudden, brutal impact knocked the wind out of him. He felt his body twist unnaturally as the shark latched onto his side, shaking him like a rag doll. Pain flooded through him, but it didn't last long. His vision blurred. The world tilted, and then nothing. From the shore, a few early morning beachgoers had seen the commotion. A lifeguard had rushed to grab his rescue board, but it was too late when he made it into the water. The ocean was calm again. The waves rolled in and out as if nothing had happened. There was no sign of the 5 friends. Only the faint stain of red in the water remained, slowly fading as the tide carried it away. By the time rescue boats arrived, there was nothing left to find. The search lasted hours, then days, but the bodies were never recovered. The ocean had taken them. The news of the attack spread quickly, shocking the local community. Shark experts analyzed the incident, pointing to the nearby fishing boat as the likely cause. The discarded fish waste had drawn the predator in, and the swimmers had unknowingly entered its hunting zone. It was a tragic mistake, one that cost 5 lives. A mistake that could never be undone.